Hi, and welcome to the Men on the Path to Love podcast, the Emotional Safety, the Skill That Changes Everything episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. I coach men who are rebuilding their lives and relationships after breakup or divorce, helping them understand their relationship patterns, grow into the best version of themselves, and create deeper love and real connection, showing up differently for the next chapter of their lives, so they can live the life they love. Let me ask you this. What if the most important thing in your relationship isn't communication, chemistry, attraction, or even compatibility? What if it's this? Does your partner feel emotionally safe with you? Because when emotional safety is missing, people stop sharing honestly. They stop expressing their needs. They walk on eggshells. They shut down emotionally. Or they become reactive because they don't feel heard or seen, understood, or safe enough to be vulnerable. And the hard truth is, most men were never taught what emotional safety actually is. And a lot of women too. But for us guys, we were taught how to provide, how to stay strong, how to solve problems, and how to push through discomfort. But very few of us were taught how our tone, our defensiveness, shutting down emotionally, our controlling behavior, or even our energy can make someone feel emotionally unsafe, even when we don't mean any harm. And here's why this changes everything. When there's emotional safety in relationship, connection deepens. People open up. Repair after an argument or mistake happens faster. Conflict becomes workable. Trust grows, and intimacy grows. But when emotional safety is missing, even good relationships slowly start to erode. And man, this lesson changed my life. And that's what this episode is all about, the lesson on emotional safety. Not just understanding it intellectually, but truly understand what it feels like to create it, or not to create it. Because once I finally understood emotional safety, the light bulb went on. And I've never looked at relationships the same way since. Yeah, there was a time in my life where if you had asked me whether I was emotionally safe in relationships, I would have said, hell yeah, absolutely. I didn't yell much. I wasn't physically aggressive. I thought I was being logical, responsible, and in control. But during a couples counseling session with one of my ex-wives, I heard something that honestly shocked me. With the support of the therapist, my ex was able to share that she often experienced me as controlling, that she didn't always feel comfortable expressing her feelings or asking for what she wanted because she feared my reaction. And I had no idea. That's what hit me the hardest. I really didn't think I was doing that. But what I understood was part of it was the way I communicated. Part of it was how I got defensive. And part of it was this unspoken emotional energy I carried. You know how sometimes someone doesn't have to say anything mean or harsh, but you can still feel the tension or that judgment or disapproval or control? That was part of what she experienced from me. And when this was explained clearly to me in counseling, that light bulb went on. And honestly, part of me felt guilty because my ego didn't want to see that part of myself. I wanted to think, nah, man, I'm a good guy. I'm trying. I'm not controlling. But having that awareness forced me to confront something deeper. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I think that's true for so many men. Most men aren't intentionally trying to scare their partners or make them feel emotionally unsafe, right? But intention and having impact are not always the same thing. And once I became aware of it, everything started changing. And even though that marriage eventually ended, the lesson stayed with me. To this day, creating emotional safety remains one of the most important things I practice. Not just with my wife, but with family, friends, my clients, everyone. Because emotional safety changes how people experience you. And when people feel emotionally safe with you, they open their hearts. So, why does emotional safety matter so much? Well, research backs this up in a major way. Relationship expert Dr. John Gottman found that one of the strongest predictors of relationship success, whether partners feel emotionally safe enough to be vulnerable, honest, and emotionally engaged during a conflict. Not perfect, just safe. Psychologist Sue Johnson also emphasized that emotional responsiveness and emotional accessibility are central to secure attachment in adult relationships. In other words, can I come to you emotionally and still feel respected, heard, and cared for? Or do I feel dismissed, judged, controlled, ignored, or punished emotionally? Because when someone repeatedly feels emotionally unsafe, their nervous system remembers, and eventually they stop opening up altogether. I think about my client Donovan, not his real name. He originally came to me through a therapist referral at the clinic where I work for stress reduction. At first, he mostly talked about relationship stress. And one day he started venting about how much he hated when his wife, I'll call her D, criticized his driving. And honestly, I've heard versions of this many times with men. Donovan said that D would complain about how fast he drove and how closely he followed the other cars, especially on the highway. He kept insisting, "I'm a good driver. I've never had a speeding ticket. I've never been in an accident. She should just trust me." So after hearing that, I intuitively asked him something. I said, "Has Dee ever been in an accident herself?" He paused and said, "Yeah, when she was a kid. She was in the car when her mother got T-boned by someone who ran a red light." He said nobody was badly hurt, but it shook her up pretty bad. Well, after hearing that, I asked him, "Do you think your driving scares her?" And he immediately said, "Yeah, she says that all the time." But then he followed up with, "I tell her I'm in control and not to worry." And that's when I seized the moment. I told him I could relate to Dee, because when I was a teenager, I was in a serious car accident myself. My friend was driving, and a truck came toward us. He swerved, the car flipped and rolled until we hit a tree. Thankfully, we survived without injury. But man, it scared the hell out of me. And for years afterward, honestly, even now at times, I struggled being a passenger in cars whenever I felt like the car was moving too fast or it was out of control. So I told Donovan, "Look, man, if I was riding with you and I told you I felt scared and you didn't slow down, eventually I just wouldn't ride with you anymore." And then I said something that really hit him hard. I was like, "Donovan, here I am telling you I'm scared, and your response is basically, I don't give a shit because I feel in control." He paused, and then he said, "Damn, I never thought about it that way." Then came the deeper realization. He realized he wasn't only failing to create physical safety in the car, he also wasn't creating emotional safety in the relationship. He often shut down emotionally. He would get defensive. He needed to be the authority. And he struggled validating Dee's emotional experience unless he personally agreed with it. And once he got that driving analogy, everything clicked. And that insight honestly helped save his marriage. Because emotional safety isn't about whether you think someone should feel safe. It's about whether they actually do feel safe. All right, so what does emotional safety actually look like in a healthy relationship? Well, it looks like this. It's about being able to express feelings without fear of being punished. Feeling heard instead of dismissed. Feeling validated instead of judged. It's being able to disagree without the fear of shutting down emotionally or attack. It's also feeling emotionally accepted even during a conflict or argument. And this is a big one, that vulnerability won't be used as a weapon later. And again, this doesn't mean perfection. It's not about being perfect, because you're going to mess up. We all do. What matters most is having the awareness to repair and willingness to grow. Now, I want to go over some of the biggest ways men unintentionally damage emotional safety. Defensiveness is a big one. I had to learn this, man. Yeah, instead of listening, often we immediately explain ourselves, right? We try to prove we're right instead of understanding the emotional experience underneath what our partner is saying. Shutting down emotionally is another emotional safety crusher. Many men learn to withdraw emotionally when feeling overwhelmed or stressed. But to a partner, emotional withdrawal often feels like you're abandoning them. Another thing that gets in the way of emotional safety is needing to be in control. Yeah, and sometimes what looks like leadership is actually control that's driven by fear. And let me tell you, control rarely creates safety. I know, because it didn't work for me. Another big one I see a lot, and that is not validating feelings. Yeah, it's saying things like, oh, you're overreacting, or that doesn't make any sense, or you're too sensitive. And I get that this can be unintentional, but what it does is teaches the other person that their emotions aren't safe with you. And one last thing I'll mention is communicating reactively, reacting instead of responding. Look, tone and body language matters, okay? Facial expressions matter. Energy matters. You can say, I'm fine, but your face and body language may say something else. Sometimes emotional safety is damaged less by our words and more by how we communicate and carry ourselves emotionally. All right, so let's talk about what actually helps create emotional safety. This one I say a lot, and that is slow down before reacting. When you get triggered or charged, pause, man. Just pause, take a breath, regulate yourself first. A regulated nervous system creates safer conversations. So you want to respond from the man you want to be, not react from your old patterns, the way you used to be. Another one is validate before trying to solve. And this can be a real game changer. Understand that you don't have to agree with someone's feelings to validate them. You're validating their experience, not whether it's right or wrong. So a simple phrase could be, I can understand why you'd feel that way. Or, that makes sense. Or, I hear you. I didn't realize that impacted you like that. Those are simple phrases you can say to validate that person. It's not saying they're right or wrong. It's just validating. And when someone feels validated, it pretty much lowers their defensiveness right away. Next is become curious instead of right. Saying something like, well, help me understand, or tell me more. Because when you're curious instead of trying to be right, I'll put it this way, curiosity creates connection. Defensiveness destroys it. All right? Another thing is, after conflict or making a mistake, repair quickly. If you mess up, own it, man. Don't let your ego block repairing. And when you do repair, do it quickly. My wife and I have a 24-hour rule. If we don't bring it up within 24 hours, we have to eat it. Because trying to repair what happened, 2 weeks ago may be forgotten, or too much festering has happened in between. So do it ASAP, man. And that can be as simple as saying, You're right. I can see how that hurt you. That's it. And that can completely shift a conversation, and it creates connection instead of disconnection. And one last piece I'll say is make space for honesty. Ask your partner, do you feel emotionally safe being honest with me? And then listen without judging or punishing. Because that question alone, do you feel emotionally safe being honest with me, can change a relationship. It can be the wake-up call for you to create more emotional safety for your partner to be honest with you. And look, man, emotional safety changes everything because it changes whether love can fully breathe inside a relationship. Without safety, people protect themselves. With safety, people connect. And again, if you're realizing while listening to this that maybe you haven't always created emotional safety, don't spiral into shame, man, or guilt, even though I understand why you would, because I've been there. But here's the thing. Awareness is the beginning, all right? That awareness changed my life. It changed Donovan's marriage, and it can absolutely change your relationships too. And if you're struggling with emotional safety in your relationships or realizing you were never taught how to create it, I can help. Just visit menonthepattholove.com to learn more about my coaching and resources for men rebuilding themselves after a breakup or divorce and their relationships. Okay, so that brings us to my quote of the week. It's from author and speaker Gabor Mate. He says, quote, "Safety is not the absence of threat. It is the presence of connection," unquote. Yeah, man, it's not enough for someone to just avoid hurting us emotionally. Real safety comes from feeling understood, accepted, and connected in the relationship. And that's going to wrap up this episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, the Emotional Safety, the Skill That Changes Everything episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. Thanks so much for listening. Now, coming up next on the Men on the Path to Love podcast, as I continue my series on building a healthy relationship, I'm going to dive deeper into how to deal with conflict. Because conflict is inevitable in relationships, man. It's gonna happen. And the real question is, can you move through conflict in a way that actually strengthens connection instead of destroying it? That's what I'm going to explore next. The How to Handle Conflict Without Destroying Your Connection episode. And this is different from the earlier episode of How to Communicate Without Shutting Down or Blowing Up, because that episode focused more on emotional regulation and communication patterns. But next time, I'm focusing on conflict itself. All right? And if this episode helped you in some way and you know someone who needs to hear it, because a lot of men are suffering silently in relationships. And sometimes one conversation can change everything. So share the link to this podcast and share the love. And until next time, keep your heart open and stay on the path to love.